Hello everyone, this is Chase again, and I'm here with another BookPort Plus video tutorial. Today we're going to be taking a look at the different menu options on the BookPort Plus, and looking at what those do, and this will allow you to set different settings to allow you to use your BookPort Plus easier in a way that suits your usage situation. I'm going to wake my BookPort Plus up by pressing any key, so I'll just tap a key.
12:44 p.m.
You hear the time, and to get into the menus, which is, where, as I said, where all of your options and settings and information is, I'll press the menu key, which you might remember is the second key on the right of the unit, second key from the top. It's right below the power button with the two bumps on it. So if I tap the menu key, and before I go into that, I'm just going to warn you that if you don't do anything and you just sit in the menu, you're going to hear pretty much a constant chime that reminds you that you're supposed to be making a choice and that you're in the menu, so I'm going to have to talk over that. So I'm going to tap the menu key.
Menu. Edit. Use right or left arrow to choose item. Press down arrow to select or up arrow to cancel.
And there's that chime that will continue to play. Edit is what will allow you to edit a file if it's one that can be edited. For example, you can edit a text file and change the words and characters in that text file on the BookPort Plus. I was in a Daisy book when I entered the menu, so if I press down arrow, like it told me to do to open a menu,
Cannot edit this title.
it tells me that it cannot edit this title because it's a book, it's something that's recorded, and it is not a recording made on the BookPort Plus. So there is no edit menu right now, so let's go to the next option with right arrow.
Recording.
This is the recording menu, where we set different options for recording on the BookPort Plus. If I press my down arrow,
Enter. Recording mode.
we have our recording mode. This is a sub-menu, meaning there's more choices by opening this sub-menu. So if I press down arrow,
Enter. Default.
we have default, by right arrow to move through the options.
Conference.
Conference,
Audio.
audio,
Analog cassettes.
analog cassette,
Radio.
radio,
Custom.
and custom.
Default.
Now, these are different settings that'll let the BookPort Plus set different options for you. For example, if you choose Conference, it's going to set settings for a larger room, so it'll pick up sounds far away from you. If I press down arrow here,
Enter. Sound quality.
it wants to know
MP3,
our sound quality.
128 kilobits per second. 44.1 kilohertz stereo.
If you aren't comfortable going through these settings, if you don't know what the kilobits and the sampling rate and all of the different audio options are, you'll want to just press down arrow to continue and save that option. If not, you'll want to go to the right arrow.
MP3, 64 kilobits per second. 44.1 kilohertz mono.
And that's getting lower quality. So let's go back to the left.
MP3, 256 kilobits per second.
256K.
44.1 kilohertz stereo.
That'd be a very, very nice crisp sound. So to save this, I'll go down arrow,
Enter. Set.
and that's set. Now when you set an option, you get kicked out of the menu. So to go back in, we have to press menu,
Menu.
right arrow to recording,
Enter.
down arrow into recording.
Mode.
Now, you noticed an option called custom in there. That would behave in the same way that we just looked at with conference, but you would have more settings and there wouldn't be a default. You would have to pick each option, and you couldn't just go with the defaults. And by default, it's already set for a pretty nice recording, so if you don't need to have it in a different setting or change your audio quality, you can just leave it on what the BookPort Plus is on by default. I'm going to press right arrow.
Guidance when recording.
Guidance when recording is the next option. Let's down arrow to go into that.
Guidance on.
Guidance on is what it says first, which means that's what it's currently set to. If we go to the right,
Guidance off.
guidance off. I'm going to go back
Guidance on.
to guidance on, so I'm just cycling between those with the right arrow. You could also use the left arrow. And that tells if you want the BookPort Plus to speak to you while you're recording and say that your level's too high or that sound is too loud. This is nice if you have headphones on when you're recording because you can make sure you're getting a good sound. If you record with the internal microphone and you don't use headphones, you'll want to turn this off so you don't record the BookPort Plus's speech, and guidance is what it's calling the speech.
Cancel. Guidance when
I
recording.
pressed up arrow to cancel because that was already on the option that I wanted. So I'm back into my recording menu. If I press the right arrow,
External audio input jack.
external audio input jack. If I down arrow,
Enter. Microphone mode.
microphone mode
Line in
or
mode.
line in mode.
Microphone Microphone mode.
There's just those two options. This controls the microphone jack on the top left of the BookPort Plus. If you plug in a microphone to record, you'll want it to set it to microphone. If you're using a patch cable to record something like your stereo or a radio, then you'll want to set it to line in. The BookPort Plus does have an internal microphone, so if you don't have something plugged in, then you don't need to bother with this option. You'd find the option you want and down arrow to save it, and you would exit the menu just like we did before. So I'm going to up arrow to cancel,
External
right arrow.
Auto gain control.
Auto gain control allows the BookPort Plus to adjust its recording volume to pick up loud or quiet sounds. So if it's recording and it hears something very loud, it will turn down the recording volume so that you don't get a bad sound from the recording. If the sound is very quiet, it will turn up the volume so it will pick up the quiet sound better. So if you're going to have a lot of different volumes in one recording, you'll want to turn on the auto gain control. Let's go into this with down arrow.
Auto gain control on.
It's set to on, but there's also
Auto gain control off.
off. Let's go back to
Auto
on
gain control
and up
on.
arrow to cancel. You would do it if you were going to save your setting, you would down arrow to save it.
Recording mode.
And we're back to recording mode, which is where we started. So that's all in the recording menu.
Cancel.
So I pressed
menu.
up arrow, which
Recording.
canceled, and we're back into the main menu. So let's right arrow.
Playback.
Now we have the playback menu. Let's go into it with down arrow.
Enter. Shuffle and repeat.
Shuffle and repeat. Let's go into this with down arrow.
Enter. Playback setting. Standard play.
If you're playing a bunch of audio files like music and you want to set if it's going to shuffle those or play them in order, you have options to do that here. Standard play means it's just going to continue from one file to another in order and only play each file once. If we right arrow,
Repeat title.
repeat title, it will repeat the current title once,
Standard play.
and we're back to standard play.
Cancel. Shuffle and
I
repeat.
canceled, and we're back at the playback menu. Let's right arrow.
Audio file announcement.
Audio file announcement. If you are again playing a bunch of music or audio files, the BookPort Plus by default will announce the name of the new file with its text-to-speech voice. If you just want to listen to your music or your audio book and you don't want to hear each file name, you would want to go into this with down arrow.
Read file name.
If we right arrow,
Read track number.
you could read track number, which is what you would do if you were playing music and you wanted to know what number of song you were listening to.
Read file name.
And those are our two options. If we go back with
Cancel.
up arrow,
Audio file. Multimedia Daisy playback.
we have Multimedia Daisy Playback. If you remember, I said when we went into the menu, I was in a Daisy book. So if we down arrow,
This setting only applies to multimedia Daisy titles.
you hear that this current title doesn't have that functionality. What this means is that some Daisy books, which are books that can be navigated, contain both audio that is read by a human and text that can be read by the text-to-speech voice. Some textbooks, like those from Learning Ally, for example, might have this. So if you have both human audio and text, you can toggle whether the BookPort Plus plays the audio or reads the text with this option. If I go to the right,
Shuffle and repeat.
we're back to shuffle and repeat, so let's get out of this menu because we've gone through all the items.
Cancel.
Up arrow
menu.
cancels back to the
Playback.
main menu.
Bookmark.
Next menu, or the next big menu is called Bookmark. Let's go into it with down arrow.
Enter. Playback voice bookmarks.
Voice bookmarks allow you to set a voice note within a book or a file. So if you want to go back to a spot and remind yourself of something, you can have a voice tag play whenever you get to that spot in a file. This controls whether the BookPort Plus will play the notes you've recorded as a voice bookmark. Let's go into this with down arrow.
Voice bookmarks on.
Voice bookmarks on
Voice bookmarks off.
or off. I like
Voice
to leave it at
bookmarks
on,
on.
so we'll go back to on and cancel with up
Cancel.
arrow.
Playback voice bookmarks.
If you're going to be using this, it's recommended you leave it on. This is something that's very nice if you're reading a textbook and you want to leave yourself notes or references to another textbook or a worksheet or something like that. Let's go to the right.
Clear all bookmarks and current title.
If we just wanted to get rid of all the bookmarks and start over, we would do this, and this would clear all the bookmarks. If we go to the right,
Playback voice bookmarks.
that's our only two items in the bookmark menu. So let's go up arrow to get out of that menu. To the right,
Voice memo.
we hear our voice memos. This is our options for the voice memos. Let's go down arrow.
Enter. Delete the selected voice memo.
If we were playing voice memos, we would play them and use this option to delete the currently playing or currently selected voice memo. If we go to the right,
Delete all voice
we can
memos.
delete all voice memos on the BookPort Plus's internal memory. If we go to the right again,
Delete the selected voice memo.
that's our only two options. So up arrow gets out of the voice memo menu.
Voice memo. Podcast.
Here's the podcasts menu. Let's go into this.
Enter. Update episode list.
The BookPort Plus will automatically download podcasts over Wi-Fi if you have podcast feeds on the device. We could update an episode list to see if there's new podcasts out there by using this option.
Download all episodes in this feed.
I went to the right, and we could download all episodes in a certain podcast feed. I'm not looking at podcasts right now, so this would just download the last podcast feed that I was playing. I'll go to the right again.
Update episode list.
And that's it in the podcast menu. So we'll up arrow to get out of it, go to the right, and this is our backup choice.
Enter. No backup target media.
No backup target media. If you wanted to back up, for example, an NLS cartridge that you might have got in the mail from your local Talking Book library, you could connect that via a USB cable to the BookPort Plus. The backup option would copy the book from the cartridge or a thumb drive onto your SD card so that you could send that book back to your library and have that book with you on your BookPort Plus. This option is unavailable because I do not have a thumb drive or an NLS cartridge connected, so there's nothing to back up to my SD card.
No backup target media.
We hear that there's no backup target media, and it'll keep repeating this announcement when you press any key until you use up arrow to cancel out a backup.
Menu. Backup.
And we're back to the main menu. Let's go to the right.
Media management.
Here's a pretty important menu. This is called Media Management. Let's go into it with down arrow.
Enter. Media and title information.
I want to show you this, so let's go into Media and Title Information with down arrow.
Enter. Media information. SD card unlocked. Free space 3 gigabytes. Total size 3.6 gigabytes. Title information. Daisy. This title cannot be prepared for editing. Used space for this title 100 megabytes. Media information.
And it will
SD
repeat
card
this
unlocked.
until we
Free
use
space,
up
3
arrow
gigabytes.
to
Cancel.
get out of that Media and Title Information dialog. So that tells us everything from the current type of file we're listening to whether you can edit that file or not. And that also tells you how much space it takes up, how much room you have on your SD card, and how much room your SD card has in total. If you need to know these things, you will go into this dialog like we just did. If not, you can just pass it by and go to the next option with right arrow.
Erase SD card.
This option will erase everything on your SD card. Please don't do this if you don't need to, because once the files are deleted, you can't get them back without sending them from your computer once again. But if you want to delete everything on your SD card, this is the way to do it. Let's go to the right again.
Create new title.
This would allow us to create a new title. When it says create new title, this refers to a recording. So this would allow us to create a brand new recording, and when we're done recording, we can make it into a Daisy book. Let's go to the right arrow. Let's go to the right again with right arrow.
Create new text file.
Create new text file. This will allow us to create a new note, and we could type, and we will show this in a future video, but this will open a blank text document.
Delete title.
This will allow us to delete the current title that we're playing, in this case, the Daisy book.
Delete file.
Right again gets to delete file, which will delete a text file or a recording.
Prepare for editing.
Right again gets to prepare for editing. If we want to change something in a recording, we would use this option. If you go to the right
Build
again,
book.
build book. If you want to make your recording into a Daisy book that will play on other devices, you would use this option, and then you could play it in another BookPort Plus or the NLS player or a Daisy program on your computer. This is very nice in school. If you go to the right again,
Network folder.
this will allow us to go into network folder mode, which allows us to play and send files from your computer. So if you didn't want to connect your BookPort Plus with a USB cable, you would use book transfer software to send files wirelessly by going into the network folder mode with the down arrow key.
Media and title information.
The right arrow goes back to the first option we chose, and so that's all in this menu, so let's get out of it with
Cancel
up arrow.
menu.
That's all for this tutorial on the BookPort Plus. We are out of time, but we will be back in our next video showing you the rest of the menu options. This is a very important part of the BookPort Plus, learning all the different choices you have in the menu. So we will be back in just a few days with more on the menus.